Very warm welcome to all of you for our Emertxe Masterclass webinar series. This Masterclass webinar series is being aimed to bring in knowledge from experts, right, who are working in that particular domain, been there, done that, and we invite them to share their real-time experiences on a specific topic. If you look at the past 5 topics that we looked in, pretty much related to what you guys are studying or where you want to have your career. If you remember the past topic, which ranged from electric vehicles, then we moved on to Linux operating system, then edge computing and machine learning. Then we had a topic about solar panel and how the electrovoltaic kind of thing. And last webinar we had about blockchain, right? So in that series today we have the 6th masterclass webinar series. So this we call it as drone. This thing, right? So this is going to be on the topic I'll introduce shortly, right? So as I said, this is open for all students, and the initial slides, some of them I run. Typically for emergency students, it may be repetitive for people who are attending a second or third time, but still there are good amount of new participants, so it is my responsibility to run through all of them, right? So let me quickly introduce what Emertxe people don't know. We are an EdTech company, and we focus on 3 technologies: embedded systems, IoT, and full stack web development. As an organization, we aspire to solve 2 challenges that is currently we see in the engineering segment. One is for entry-level engineers who are looking for their first job. We put them through a 6 months training program and help them to get jobs. And people who have started working, who wanted to improve their skills and get into the core, embedded IoT, this type of areas, we work on an upskilling model and try to get into them into the career what they like or what they aspire for. So that's what we've been doing over the years. And we also started the internship programs to give this exposure to the college students, as a part of our industry academia contributions. That's why you see a lot of interns also coming in. And just to give a brief about our organization leadership, 3 of us are part of our leadership team. Mr. Maz, who is the founder and the managing director of the organization, and I'm one of the part of the co-leadership team. Primarily, my portfolio is on placements, and also run a lot of these outreach programs. And then Mubin is our technology head, who leads a team of mentors. Pretty much all of you have been interfacing with the mentors, people who are going through the internship or class. So over the years, me and Mubin kind of moved a little back end, right? We have a pretty big team now who is facing you on a regular basis. But on the other hand, wherever there is a chance to meet our students, be it a monthly placement meet or these type of webinars, we tend to do the front ending, right? That's about our team, our leadership team. And people who know who's been part of the course or internship, right? Our primary objective is to skill the engineers and make them recruit or make them suitable for the core companies. We have been having tons of organizations hiring, be it large MNCs, mid-sized organizations, startups, right? And then this year has been phenomenal. People know we're part of the Google groups. We've been getting the regular intimation as well, right? That's a brief about Emertxe. And coming back to these webinars, why these webinars, right? I always tell about 2 M's in place. One is like what you call mentoring, another is called motivation. You guys are going through this course with a lot of challenges from your side. You have an aspiration to have a career, but do not have a job in hand as of now. So there is a lot of expectation from your parents, expectation from the people around you. And in a lighter note, I tell your relatives and neighbors are more curious when you are going to get your first job, right? So you go through a lot of challenges, and you lead time to time. You need mentoring, right? Even though we share, from Emertxe's point of view, right? Our team tries to do our level best. It's also important for you guys to get an outsider's perspective, right? How exactly things are being applied. How people come from similar background. Like all of us are. I know Sunil for a long time now. We all come from similar background, right? How they've been there, done that, right? How they're able to contribute, grow in their career, not only grow in their career, make an impact on many other people's career and lives as well, right? So that's what we bring in as a mentoring via these masterclass webinars. And when you hear to these people, we tell them, right, don't give any kind of, big yarn, a very theoretical fashion. We tell them, right, whatever you are doing, you speak. Right? You don't need to prepare something, very flashy or something. And knowing all the participants, all the presenters you see in the last 5 talks, they have been talked whatever they've done, right? Though in the similar lines, today's topic also has been planned, right? And when you hear to these people, we see that, we go charged up by the end of the webinar, right? And then we are, influenced or motivated to take some action. That action could be in form of, improving your skill set, going on kind of project, or, exploring more in the topic, what is getting presented, etc., right? So mentoring results in motivation. That's what we've seen over the years. So that's our objective in which we've been running these masterclass webinars. So with that note, let me introduce today's topic, right? So today's topic is very interesting one. It's about open source. I just want to have a couple of points, and I don't want to be the spoil sport here. I'll hand it over to Sunil to run the entire session. Right. Way back in my college, of course, till 12th standard, you all go through Windows, right? When I went to the college to do my engineering, that's when I was introduced to this black programming terminal called Unix. I found it very boring. What is it? I need to type every command and things like that. Then we are started writing some initial C programs, and those days was another programming language called Pascal. We are programming and compiling. Then when we reached around second year, third year, there used to be this magazine called Linux for You, which later became Open Source for You. And then all my friends and they're all saying that, hey, you know what? There is this new operating system called Linux come in place, which is free. Okay. And then I said, what do you mean by free? Every software that Indian buys, right, is a free, right? Then we don't even know the concept of piracy, but we end up using software just like that, right? Then it was a rage that we need to tinker that particular operating system, because we used to have different graphics card in our desktop. It never used to work, right? It used to be still a command line, and making the we used to call X Windows, to get the UI. Today many of the emerging students will be using Ubuntu. I just forget Ubuntu and all, to get the initial GUI working in Linux was a great deal, right? That was my first experience, dealing with the Linux and open source. And then obviously there is a lot of curious questions comes in your mind about why it is free, you know, and why do other companies charge? By charging it free, and always, we being Indian, anything we say free, right? It always comes with some catch in mind, right? So what exactly it is? So that was the initial, as a student, I was going through, right? But when I started working, I would say, the 12.5 years initially, and after about 8 years with Emertxe, right, I would say the open source has become part of life, right? What started off as a Linux, right? Later, it started touching our lives in many, many formats. Today, for example, whether you are using a Chrome or Firefox, or any open source Office software, tons of things. I just the list will be endless. It is touching our lives, right? So always there is a question that what exactly this open source, how it works. This is one part of it, right? Second important part, which Sunil is being very curious to drive as a community, is we'll talk about Soda Foundation, etc. Is that how do we bring this particular, not only because all the participants in this call are engineers, right? You don't be only the consumers of the software, right? Muft mein sabne diya, you just started using. That is one part of it, right? But as engineers, right, how do you contribute back, right, to the open source project? Where do we start, right? In fact, I think 3-4 years back, I think just before the pandemic, we made some attempts to involve some of our Emertxe students into the open source initiative that Sunil is driving, right? So we tried to do that. Then it went in somewhere, and somehow we started making, but we want to make it do more, right? Because we are really passionate about contribute. So when you contribute, what happens? How you can grow as a career, and how it can impact as a professional, right? Contributing to open source, right? So that's going to be the two parts, right? One is what is this, who and what are open source, and how can you start contributing to open source? So those two are the major questions in my mind, which I'm expecting, like all of you, to get answers from today's talk. Coming to Sunil, Sunil is a chief architect in Huawei, and he has more than 20 years of work experience, predominantly working in the Linux open source space. Then moved on to the cloud and a lot of the infrastructure related stuff which is happening in the open source space. And me got an opportunity to work with Sunil during my Huawei tenure. We both were part of the same team, and incidentally that also happened to be a Linux team where we're customizing Linux for various Huawei's product lines, right? So from then on I moved on to Emertxe. Then Sunil continued in Huawei. He still continues to be there, and subsequently be going beyond Linux, he also got an opportunity to drive the open source initiatives, which is going to talk about, right? So more than anything else, all of us to take lessons is that from Sunil's point of view, probably Sunil, I want you to touch upon, right, how individuals can grow in the technical career, because these are all young bunch of kids, 21, 22. They have all sort of questions in place, right? That is something also, along with the other talk open source, right? How you can grow as a chief architect or a very senior technologies in this industry, right? That's something which we all wanted to know, right? That's what about Linux. Sorry, Sunil. Thank you, Sunil, for accepting the invitation and immediately, jumping on. Unfortunately, he fell sick last Saturday. That's why we moved to this week. Anyways, I don't see any enthusiasm going in down. We're almost having 100 participants, right? So coming to the protocol, all of you know, you can just type in the window. Sunil will not be able to see them. I will, once the set of questions collate, Sunil can ask and then I can, answer on behalf of you, because all the messages are coming in my window. And once the set of questions comes, Sunil can take a logical break. I can kind of, read out the question on your behalf, and Sunil can answer, right? I know many of you have been attending past webinars, right? So that's about it. And towards the end of the webinar, right, we always want to keep the sessions motivated. We have a quiz already in place. Questions are already sent by Sunil, which will go live in our Emertxe Instagram page. And just to ensure that only the participants of today take up the quiz, right? We have more than, I think, almost 7,000 followers in our Instagram. We don't want anybody to take part, right? Only people who participated in the webinar should take up the quiz. So I will be giving you a coupon code after the talk is being done by Sunil. So you need to put the coupon code, then take the quiz, right? And winners of the quiz will get goodies. Our team has been shipping them regularly, and all the participants today will get the participation certificate, in the early next week, right? And you'll also get this a recorded video of this particular session. So all these things will happen by next week. People who are attending regularly know that. Okay. So that's it, guys. Let me and share my screen. Sunil, I will be making you as a presenter, and then you can share your screen, and then I will kind of log off. Let me make you a presenter.
So you will be here to listen to me, is it?
Yeah, I'm there. Only I'll go off the video. I'm there throughout this.
That's fine. Okay,
Sunil,
so I can share the screen now. So you can see my desktop? Or
yeah, I'm able to. Yeah. Guys, you are able to see the desktop. Can you just confirm once Sunil's desktop? Yeah.
You can see me, you can hear me, and you can see the screen, correct?
Yes. They're all saying yes. Okay. All right. So I will go off the video. I am offline, right? I'll come back in video. I don't want to disturb the talk, right? So over to you, Sunil. Thank you very much. So guys, as always, feel free, ask as many questions as possible. I always tell there is no question is wrong question, no question is stupid question, right? It's important that you guys ask. So I don't get any opportunity, you'll get something like this to directly interact with a senior person like Sunil, right? So please feel free to ask. Once you compile, I'll group it and then I'll ask those questions. Okay. Over to you, Sunil. I'll be there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Jay, and thanks to all of you to join the session. Okay. Yeah. First of all, thanks, Jay and team, to invite me for this session. Always interested to talk to students and young developers, especially about open source. So today, today we will be talking about open source, very basic things, and how probably it can help, and what is needed from your side to get maximum out of open source. So I divided into the same as our title, like what is open source, a brief about open source, then why open source, and then how in the sense how open source works, and then how we can contribute and be part of it. And then of course there is some more a little extension to our title. By the way, can I get a job faster? This will be more interesting for you. I have one slide, but I will probably we will discuss some things there. Maybe we'll give some tips and tricks to how really open source can help you out, but nothing comes free. you need to be prepared for certain actions, like Jay mentioned. And more importantly, one of the key focus areas of Emertxe, like employability. So that aspect is very much well connected with today's topic. So going through the sessions, we'll come to know that. Okay, so uh, Jay, I need your help because generally I make the session interactive, but it's very hard on online sessions. It's very difficult. So at times I used to have some online surveys kind of stuff to make it interactive. But today, I think if I ask something, people can only chat. I mean, in the chat window, they can type, but that you can see it. Probably I need your help to echo the chat messages
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that
sure.
to some extent we can make it interactive. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
because yeah, okay. Okay, so first we'll start with something just to uh, icebreaker, right? Just to start the session. Then we will go into what, then why, then how, and stuff like that. And then I have a section, particular section for Soda Foundation. I will go a little faster because those slides are not very much, I mean, significantly important for our session today. But end of it, there is some part where we talk about how you can join, where to start, how to contribute, things like that. Very high level, but there are certain actions you can take, very simple actions which you can take. And then we will talk about how it can help your career. Okay. So that's how I just organize the session. So anytime you have questions, as Jay mentioned, you can just send it. Okay, let's start with something interesting. I hope you know this person. You can respond in chat whether you know this person or not.
Right.
If
Do you
you
know this
know, you
person?
can.
Somebody is telling yes. Most of them are yes. All yeses are
Yes, but
coming.
who? But
Are
who?
Rajinikanth.
Who,
Both.
who is this? Okay, so you get the answers very quickly, right?
Yes. Superstar Rajinikanth. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Superstar, style manan, right?
Mm. Talaivar. That is not there. I have not
Talaivar.
seen yet.
Okay. So
Mm.
Shivaji Rao Gaikwad became Rajinikanth, superstar, style manan. This is just to get your attraction. Okay, this is a trick. Don't worry. This is nothing to do with open source. He is not connected with open source. I mean, as far as I know.
Yeah, some
Okay.
Talaivas coming. Krishna and Varshna are telling.
Yeah.
Talaiva.
Okay, that's nice. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Anybody knows this person? Similar, I mean, gray hair, gray bird, and gray hair. Similar look. Do you know this person?
Looks hidden, huh?
Anybody knows?
So I'm saying Hari Krishnan is telling Richard Stallman, but the majority of them are saying no. And then Shaktivel
Okay.
is telling open contributor, no idea.
Okay.
Then Vishesh is telling Linux Trolled, no sir, says Gauri. A lot of things are no. Some of them are saying Richard Stallman, Linux Torvald, some names are coming like this. Yeah.
Okay. So if it would have been a, I mean, face-to-face session, I would have given chocolates to whoever told Richard Stallman. So this is Richard Stallman. And who is Richard Stallman? Richard Matthew Stallman. He started a GNU project. So GNU is nothing but GNU is not Unix. It's a acronym. I mean, a recursive acronym. And he founded Free Software Foundation, FSF. This changed our software industry much before Linux. I hope you know when Linux was founded. We'll see that later. But FSF changed the whole paradigm of software development, and he's the founder of it. And if you know Linux, the major part of Linux is not really written by Linus Torvalds. Linus Torvalds started the Linux kernel, but Linux is not just the kernel. There are a lot of compiler libraries and the GNU libraries. If you see, it's a huge base code that has been developed by the initiative by Richard Stallman. And More importantly, you may be very familiar about GPL, General Public License. If you see, Linux kernel is completely written in GPL. GPL different versions are there, V2, V3, and many open source projects, the license is GNU or GNU GPL. So Richard Stallman is one of the persons who, probably for me, the open source drive, the momentum came by his initiatives through FSF. Even FSF is right now, it's there, so you can go to, because many people, they think open source is Linux or free software started with the Linux kind of stuff, but FSF is the base, and still software, free software foundation website, you can go and you can also take membership to support this initiative. Okay, these are some small ways you can contribute without writing code. Okay, the next person I think definitely you should know, right? I don't know. Jay, any answers? I think guys will be reluctant to say answer, I think, even if they know.
Oh, no, they know. They will tell answers. Alia, but you guys are telling Chandu, Sushma, Sriraj, Ayush. Venkatesh is telling no. What Venkatesh? You don't know Alia, but my God. Then Utsava Singh, Chinnu, Prashant, Mandar, Vikas. You
Yeah,
see,
so
only
Jay,
guys.
so this is the
Yeah, but.
difference. If somebody says, I don't know Richard Stallman, that is not a surprise. But somebody says in India, I don't know Alia Bhatt, yeah, it's a surprise, right?
Right.
Especially guys are working on technology. Okay, fine. So no surprise. There is nothing hidden tricks here. It's Alia Bhatt. The trick is nothing but I want to get your attention. Okay, that's why Alia Bhatt. Now, the next one.
I'm getting some no's. Yeah, some people are Sandesh and Mohammad Dirshan are telling Linus. And Linus Torwal says Bidu, Bhushan, Burman. Then Amit and Venkatesh are telling no. Then I'm seeing more Raghu, Abhishek, Chandu are all telling Linus. Then Betty, Kunal, they are telling no. Mixed answers.
Oh, it's a mixed kind of thing. It's like as expected. This is Linus Torvalds. So I mean, he's the founder of Linux kernel. So when you use the terms, I think it's very important. He's a creator of Linux kernel, not just Linux. Because once you say Linux, like I mentioned, Richard Stallman started the project, and the kernel, the key components in the kernel was missing, where Linus Torvalds started working on it and then published, saying that because that made Linux more popular as an operating system to get it deployed in different commercial and free operating systems. So that's what it started. So why I showed these? One is, of course, I just wanted to interact with you in a very simple manner. But for open source, these two people are very, very important. It is not just because of Linux, because their effort in Linux and GNU made this culture, open source culture, very popular. So one major reason for open source success today is because of GNU and Linux. So that's why I just showed these people. Other Rajinikanth and Arya, but just came along with them. Okay, so this is something interesting. This is the first message Linus Torvalds was sent out in his like Jay sent its command line messaging system, mail system, where he just shouted that I'm just doing some free operating system, just like a hobby. And he took basically the GNU base libraries, and then he started writing the kernel. This is way back in 1991, so it's 30 years of Linux celebrated last year. Okay, now let's get into our topic. So open source, what is open source? Okay, So we'll, in this section, what we'll try to understand is that some of the very basic understanding about open source. So in general, you don't need to complex things. Okay, you need to understand in a simple manner what is it, and that will really help you to scale up. Right? That's the way it is. Now, what is open source? Anybody knows? Anybody has any answers? One word answer or two words? Can you just tell what is open source?
Yeah, go ahead, guys. What is mean by open source? I'm getting some answers. Sunil, Saranya is telling free of cost.
Free of
Free to
cost.
use, says Raghunath. Then open to all, says Raghunath. Code
Okay.
design but publicly, says Ajinkya. Good number of them are telling free of cost. Source code available, says Saranya and Somasekar. Free with GPL, says Sandesh. Anyone says there's no need permission for modification use, says Nirav. Open to all, says Muhammad. Then Utsava is telling code is open source version. Free with GPL, says Venkatesh Dinni. Yeah, free
Okay.
uh, community or
So
open.
free of cost is free of cost, publicly available. All these things were, I mean, most of the answers, right? Yeah. So I think Sharanya and Utsav, I think they mentioned saying that the source is available or something similar to this publicly accessible kind of stuff. So let's not make it complicated, like free of cost. I can maybe I can develop, distribute, so on and so forth, and stuff like that. So let's go with the Sharanya and Utsav. Like open source is nothing but source is open. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay. It is there in the word, in these words itself. Open source means the source code or the source. Okay. Why I mention source? Because today, more than software, more than just the software, there are open source initiatives in pharmacy, in medical, pharmaceuticals, automotives, hardware design, and so on and so forth. So we will today we will more focus on the open source software part. I mean software aspect of it majorly, because that is the major part of open source. So what you need to understand is that open source is nothing but source code is open to all. That's it. So you don't need to get a lot of other things to it, that cost, licensing, and stuff like that. We will see that step by step in understanding more details about what. But if anybody asks you what is open source, the source is open. Okay. So how do we do software development? So in general, how do we do software development? We'll see closed source. Closed source, don't worry about, don't think about just Microsoft or some proprietary code. I mean, don't worry about too many jargons. Closed source means I don't want to show my source code to you. That's it. Maybe I have developed something today, but nobody's seeing the code, or I don't want to show that code, or I'm not putting it public, or even if I say I developed something and it works, so I will give you the program or exe or the executable. You can run that and you can get the features, but you are not able to see the code. So that is so, I mean, closed source code. It can be developed by individual, or I can develop with one of you, or two of you, or three of you, or we together as a group we can develop. But the source code will be within us. We only share the code. Only the binaries or the programs we will give it to other people. That's it. So generally, these are the way software develop, right? One person can develop. Two people can develop in one common repositories or common place. In the sense, a server, you write code, one file you will write, one file I will write, and then you will develop. And similarly, it can be I will develop, you will develop in your laptop, I will develop in my laptop, and then we put together in one place, the CVS or any version control, one common place. But it is locked. It's only between us. Same way a group of people also can do. And it can be done by a corporate. say for example, most of the product development, proprietary product development, it happens in closed source. You will not be able to see the source code, but only the product. Now, how is it happening open source? So if you see this pictures, there is a lock on top of that system, which just indicates that the source code is closed. Here, the source code is available. That's all. So the same software development, there is nothing too remarkably different from standard software development, what you do, and the open source. What I'm trying to say is that don't get confused. Open source is something, it is not drastically different from your normal software engineering. It's the same people, the same experts, same software engineering methods, but there is some key difference in the development culture that we will see in the subsequent slides. So open source development is also in the same way. One person can do, two people can do, a group can do, and the source code is generally public. Means even if I develop, maybe I will develop in GitHub or some public repository which is public to all the people, or I develop, but when I give it to you, it is not necessary open source must be publicly available. It is not, there is no such criteria. This is another thinking everybody has, that open source means I should put a code in the public and announce in the internet. Nothing like that. Basically, I develop something, a program, I develop some program, and when I give it to you, the program, I don't only give the executable, but also the source code. So you have the right to get the source code also, to see the source code, right? That's it. That makes it open source, because I don't close the source. I am ready to give the source code. Okay. Generally, it is public. Fine. So we are on the same page, right? So the development process is the same. Only thing is that the source code is visible. So we come back to the original definition. Open source is nothing but source code is open. Very simple to understand. Now, in general, it is publicly accessible. So we use different, source code control, source control methods like Git, GitHub, Git bucket, and so on and so forth. And there are so many now. It was only Git and GitHub, but right now there are so many different source control platforms available where you can start open source projects. Now, the important point is that please don't mix at this point of time. If you are a beginner, please don't confuse with free of cost is there or not, usage rights of the source code based on license. You don't need to worry too much about it. The primary point is that open source will be controlled by a license. That license can be a different kind of licenses. You don't need to worry about it right now. And also, whether it is free or costly, we will be you need to pay some cost or not. So we'll see in the subsequent slide about certain terms, and we will understand what's the key difference between freedom, cost, and stuff like that. So at this point in time, don't worry. Open source code is open for public access with some specific rights. That means it's open source. Okay. Now, for open source, what are the key essential things required to build an open source? Okay. One, primarily a common place for the source code for development, because in general, I want to develop and it has to be publicly accessible in general. Okay. So I need a place where I can develop the code or put the code. Okay, so I can open the file, change the file, submit the file, and all the revisions I can see, make the changes, delete, update, whatever I want to do. Okay, this is one primary thing. Then what else is required? Next, okay, I have a place to put the code, but what is the next required? All right, developers. Somebody has to be there to develop the code, at least one person to develop the code, right? So we need the developers. So primarily for an open source development, just a place is required and developers are required. That's all. why I'm trying to simplify this in the beginning is that you just don't need to worry too much that open source is something else. Open source is very simple. It's just like your software development. So if you are developing something in Emertxe, there will be a server, or some revision control will be the CVS or SVN or whatever, something like that. It will be there. So where you put the code, somebody else will change that code, then somebody will review, somebody will approve, somebody will say that this code is not good, review will happen. All these things will happen. Exactly the same in open source. So wherever place is there in the source code, where if you have the rights to add directly, you can add. If you don't have the rights, you need to submit and ask the person who has the control, saying that, hey, I want to put this code, can you review and take it? If they take it, it will go into the mainstream code of that particular program or whatever they are trying to develop together. So a place and developers, that's it, enough for your open source development. So examples of these places, like I mentioned, Git, GitHub, Gitty, GitLab, Bitbucket, all these things are new platforms. Except Git and GitHub was very popular, and by default open source means GitHub or Git. It was like that, but last few years there are so many other source control platforms like Gitty, GitLab, and Bitbucket because of various reasons, political, geographical, regional reasons, and things like that. So see, in fact, forget about this. Tomorrow you can find another version control, source version control, and you can say that I am going to develop here. That's it. Okay, and developers will use different programming language like Go, C, C++, C Sharp, and so on and so forth. So many languages are there. So whatever you agree with the developers, you develop, right? It can be script, can be Python, whatever. So basically, you need a place, you need the developers, and then you can start open source development. And even today, if you want to go and start something which you think it is usable for somebody, you just go to GitHub, create an account. So immediately when you create an account, you can create a repository, you can put your code and say, share with your friends at Legion. Emertxe is saying that, hey, I have a timer code which is open sourced under a GPL or under some license, not mandatory. You say that this is my own license, it is completely free, no tags, nothing attached to it. You can do whatever you want with this code. That can be your own license, and say that, yeah, this is open source. You can either you want to contribute, you can contribute, you want to take it and create something else with this timer, do that. Okay, so you can do that. Now, little more complexity we are trying to bring in, that how an open source can work well. All right, this everything whatever we are discussing today, you can actually relate with whatever is happening in your studies or in Emertxe or an organization proprietary software development. Typical it will be typically same or similar. Okay, so we'll see what are the typical components. This is important because in the subsequent one slide, I try to say how the overall open source works. Okay, I'm just looking at the time because I go slow a little bit, and after certain slides I'll try to go fast. Okay, so the typical components of open source, one is governance. What is governance? Governance is nothing but somebody manages it, in the sense you say that what is required, I mean why we are creating this project, what is the direction, or how we can operate, where to put, is it a GitHub or Gitty, why, and overall operation is governed by this particular group. See, this can be 1%, 2%. So I mean, all these components can be 1% if it is 1% open source. Okay, but these aspects to be considered. Okay, the next one is engineering, right? So engineering is nothing but development. Then, sorry, because there is one control window on top of my slides. Okay, so the last one is the ecosystem, where you need a community around the open source, because it it needs to be users, supporters, because if there is no user for the software, probably it will not be successful, right? So these are the three typical components of open source. So governance will govern the operation structure, strategy, budget. Say for example, you want to brand it, you want to build a poster, somebody has to design it, right? Either in terms of effort you need to budget, or if you want to print that poster you need money, right? So in terms of money or effort you need to have some budget, and then roadmap, why this project and where it will head to. And on the engineering, of course, the design and development, project management, project code review, task management on the project, etc., will be done on the engineering, software engineering, typical software engineering part of it. And then, of course, the community is nothing but developers, vendors, and users. So these are the typical components for a open source project to run smoothly and to be sustainable. Okay, but it is not necessary that different entities are to be there. Suppose if I am starting an open source project, I will just consider the basic bare minimum stuff required for governance, bare minimum for engineering, and community. Community is me myself, or I will say that, hey, Emertxe, whoever attended my session, hey, do you want to join me on the development? Then I will ask this 100 people, then maybe 5 or 10 people will come forward saying that, hey, we are interested because it is Python or Go, I am very much interested, I know something, so we can contribute. That's the way community is built. Now on the engineering side, somebody should have a control to maintain the code, review the code, merge the code, etc. And this operation structure I will decide. Maybe after some time, maybe one or two of you is very much interested, then you will become a maintainer, or you will slowly grow as a core member who can make decisions for the open source project to grow. So it is a typical kind of, okay, maybe you can compare with a startup, right? Even that's the way it is. So initially you will do all the jobs, including the receptionist job, right? And later on, like Jay was telling that the core team is more of backend today because the team is grown and they need to do a lot of strategical stuff than the front-ending job. So there are more people to take care of that. So that's the same way open source also grows, any project for that matter. These are some sample open source projects. Some are very important. You just go to github.com, search millions of, I think I have one slide to say that how many projects are there. It's millions of projects out there. So here I have just given some Linux, Docker, Python. Python as a programming language, it's completely open source. Similarly, Kubernetes and most of the technology projects today are becoming open source, especially on the platform kind of projects. You will see why. So we will try to pause a while and try to understand some key terms, because these are some key terms more or less people understand wrongly and they completely confuse. Open source and free software. Okay. Open source, we have already seen the sources open. Free software, the free software in double quote, free software. This is defined today as free software. The term is defined by FSF, Free Software Foundation. Don't confuse this with freeware. Okay, freeware we'll see in as the third term. Free software talks about software freedom. Okay, I think one of you mentioned when I asked what is open source, you mentioned saying that, okay, I can edit, study, distribute and stuff like that. This is something like a freedom comes with the software. So free software is defined as software with freedom. It is not free of cost. In both of these cases, open source and free software, there is no specific criteria that needs to be free. There is nothing, nobody says that you have to give all your work free of cost. Nothing like that. You can charge $1 million, $1, $3, whatever you want to charge, you can charge. But what is important? The importance is that in this open source case, the source will be open. Whoever buys it has the right to get the source code. In the case of free software, if you get any free software, double quote, free software, you will get the freedom. What kind of freedom you will get? In the first case, the source will be open, not necessary that it is free of cost. The second case, free software, any free software defined by the FSF, if you get, the source code will be open, and also you will have the rights. The four freedom you will get. One, you can run the program free. You can edit, means you can study, edit the source code, and you can also contribute, and you can also share. Share is a enormous power in share, in the sense, say for example, Linux. Why you have lot of different distributions of Linux today? Because I can take Linux kernel or the Linux code today, and I can create Sunil's operating system. Nobody can object it. I can create a Sunil OS tomorrow with some specific features, some library and stuff like that. That is what you are seeing Ubuntu. Why are you using Ubuntu widely? Because it is little more user friendly than other Linux distributions. That's all is the difference, because they added something more to make it user friendly on top of the Linux kernel. Same Red Hat. Red Hat is a commercial OS. Similarly, they also have a free version called CentOS, exactly the same, but it is a free version. Maybe some of the libraries or some closed libraries are not there. That's it. So Linux, because this share is there, you can actually take it, modify it, you can create a new operating system, and you can sell it. In fact, you can make a new operating system, I can start selling it. Free software does not stop that. But when I give the distribution, whichever free software I have taken, I must convey the freedom to the users. I cannot stop the freedom. For example, I take the free software, I make some changes, and then I release to you. But I don't give the source code to you. That is against the principle of free software, and I can be sued by you. Why? Because free software, the backbone of free software is nothing but when I give that source code, which I modified, a new program, whatever it is, I should give you the freedom of running, editing, contributing, and share. So this is a major, very specific points about open source. Open source is general; it is much beyond free software. Okay, source is open. That's it. Means whenever you give the program, source code should be open. Free software should give the freedom, because the license abide by free software are open to provide all these four freedoms. There are other licenses. That's why I told open source. There can be open sources with other licenses beyond free software accredited or whatever, right? There can be some restrictions on commercial releases and stuff like that. I mean, patents, so many things. So don't confuse. Open source is just open. Source is open. Free software means it comes with freedom. Okay, and both of these does not say it is free of cost. It can be charged. Now, the next one is freeware. This is a very common term. That's why I use it. It has nothing to do with open source. Okay. So freeware is free software, but most of the freewares are closed source, proprietary kind of source code, but the program will be free, available. You can download, use it. Say for example, WinZip. WinZip source code, I don't know whether it is open source or not, but WinZip, if it is a proprietary code, you can't see the code, but you can download the WinZip and freely use it. It's a freeware, right? So it is free to use. Of course, there will be some conditions. Maybe some freewares will come saying that you can only use it for educational purpose, something like that. So why I use this term here, just make you understand that free software and freeware don't confuse. Okay, here I also use free software, but in fact it is free of cost. Okay, I should have corrected it. Free of cost. Okay, free of cost software. That's freeware. But free software comes with freedom. Okay, let's go. Now, when it comes to open source, you will come across with certain terms. There will be something like open source project. Then you will hear something like foundation, like Apache Foundation, Linux Foundation, Open Foundation, Open Connect Foundation, Edge Computing Foundation, that, this and all, right? So we need to know, we should not get confused that a foundation means what, right? Similarly, sub foundation like CNCF, even soda foundation is a sub foundation. So what is the relationship between them? Okay, so we'll quickly see that. So project is nothing but a project. Like I start a project, it can be multiple repository. Project does not mean that it is one repository, it can be having multiple repositories, but it is a logical project which will serve a particular problem or solve a particular problem. Say Python, Kubernetes, Linux, all these are open source projects. Now foundations, you can see Apache Foundation, Linux Foundation kind of stuff, and the sub foundations are examples are Cloud Native Computing Foundation, CNCF. If you know Kubernetes, you will know CNCF. It is under CNCF and Soda Foundation. So foundation, generally what happens is that foundation is a group of people or organizations, because today in the industry all these foundations are driven by commercial organizations spending millions of dollars into that foundation to make it sustainable, so that it makes some business sense, right? Otherwise they will not spend any money on this kind of activities. So it is important that it makes some business sense. So now these foundations are driven by these organizations, governed by these organizations, and host so many different kind of projects. Say for example Apache, there are a lot of big data, Hive, HDFS, so many projects are under Apache Foundation. So the driving organizations and its own community will decide that, hey, what are the kind of projects we need for some of the use cases. So they will develop and maintain under it. Why maintaining under it? Because the governance will be having some kind of a guideline. The quality will have a guideline, operation will have a guideline. So it will be more kind of more closer to a organization, a company developing software. It will be more like that. The quality will be better, the security will be better, the development operations will be much efficient, because earlier the open source project development was kind of a chaos, right? So these foundations will help to make it a bit more organized. Also these foundations host sub foundation. So sub foundation means the Linux Foundation is not only Linux today, okay, it takes care of so many different technologies and projects today, but in that itself there can be a bigger area. Say for example cloud native development or cloud native software development is a bigger area. That area itself will have so many other projects, so many sub projects. Because of that they create a sub foundation or a work lab or some lab. So they will create a foundation, sub foundation under that, and that sub foundation will focus on that particular areas. Say for example Soda Foundation, we focus on data and storage, data management and storage. All similar projects will host under the sub foundations. That's it. Okay, so these, just to understand these terms so that you don't get confused what is what. Okay, some of the myths and facts, I will go faster, so it's very simple. Open source project means Linux. How many of you think that it is right? Wake up. It's a wake up call. Open source project means Linux. How many of you agree to this?
Yeah, there are answers coming in, Sunil. No, right? Irshad, Hari Krishnan, Shom Shekhar, not agree. Yeah, almost all the answers are coming out no. Kunal, Venkatesh, Amit. Yeah, they're all saying no. Yeah.
Yeah, so no
And
is the right answer, because
yeah.
open source does not mean Linux. Earlier, I think it was because Linux was so popular, it was like considered as open source means Linux, right? I think many colleges, when we talk to even faculties and even in the industry people, many people who are not exposed to open source, still today they think that open source means Linux. Okay, so open source is free. I think there is no reason to ask after talking this much, right? So it is not necessary it is free. Okay, open source not necessary it needs to be free. Okay, so next one is that open source software can work with proprietary and closed source. Is it true or false? Open source can work with proprietary or closed source. Is it possible?
So coming in, Sunil, Swati is telling yes. Kunal is telling yeah. A lot of yeses coming. Irshad, Bidu, Bhushan, Sachin, Somashekar, Amit, Ajay, Chandu,
Okay.
Namita, all. Yeah, Vikas, Utsava, Sanjeev. Yeah.
It's good that we did not have this in physical because we would have spent a lot of chocolates. So, so
And I,
this is
Sunil, I'll tell you another secret with our students, right? If you would have
yeah.
come face to face, nobody will open up.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
I'm sure,
Yeah.
see, now more will come to my question, right? They're extremely vocal when it is webinar. When you go and talk to them in a class, suppose you deliver the same session in our office, for example, they won't ask any
Yeah.
questions, even if it calculates.
Uh, okay. So I think we should take one physical session and see how we can make it interactive.
You're welcome. And that's why what we do is instead of giving them chocolates, we run the quiz and give them the goodies, right? So to
Oh,
encourage more. And they're extremely vocal in webinar, huh? Okay, right. Okay.
okay. You are Jagumar Jay. You are much more liberal than me. I give chocolate. You give big goodies.
Right. So,
Okay.
all
So
right. So, one question
this is
here,
a fact.
Sunil. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
sorry.
correct. There's a question here. 1 minute. There's a
Yeah.
question from. 1 second. Let me go up.
Jay, we have
Uh,
time till 8:30, right?
nine.
Oh, till 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
7 to 9 is the time. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I
So,
don't need to be
yeah. No, right. And then, Sunil, that's a question from Ajay Kumar V. He's asking, sir, you discussed about open source software. I'm curious, what is open source hardware version control platforms? This question is from the hardware point of view. What exactly is
Oh,
that?
great. Excellent. Good question. Okay, so these days, if you Google, okay, mm, normally if you Google or search, we will find most of the software available in open source. But open source, there are open source hardwares available. So you know how the hardwares are developed these days, right? In the sense, say, for example, CPU or a microcontroller. It is designed in some specific tools, right? Say RTL and stuff like that. That is a specific way of coding or some source which you can edit. So for example, RTL, you have that. If you have the tool, you can take that file and modify. That's the way it works. uh, so what people do is that if say I want to develop a new hardware, say a CPU or a controller or whatever may be the case, what they do is that they start an open source project and they start putting this RTL and the source of the hardware design, not the design document. I'm talking about the real thing which you can convert into the hardware silicon. Okay, that they start putting in a repository and collaboratively they will develop. So this is the same way. Even I see some of the projects on open pharmacy, something like that. Say for example, if you want to develop a particular medical problem to be solved, I think people come together and discuss, and maybe I don't know what kind of source they use, maybe a research information or chemical formula or chemical compositions, stuff like that. Maybe they will share, they contribute, they do parallel testing, and then come. So open hardware is something this that the hardware design, the actual hardware design is open source. You can contribute collaboratively work and then make the final hardware. Similarly, there are other open technologies coming like pharmacy, automotive, and stuff like that. I hope I answered.
Is it clear, Kumar? Did your answer your question? Just say yes or no in the bottom. And there's one more question, Sunil. Sanjeev Basak is asking. Sanjeev's question is, sir, if a closed and open source software are combined, what would be the result? Will it be a open or will it be closed one?
I would have given two chocolates to him. It's a very good question.
Right.
Okay, so this is a very common thing in any of the organizations. Okay, why? Because most of the organization, I can say close to 100% today, you see, most of the commercial organization, AWS, Google, Microsoft, any organizations you take, their products are a combination of proprietary and open source. Say for example, you get a handset phone to your hand from Samsung, be it from Google, be it from any other HP or any other vendor. If you see the brochure or the documentation of the phone, it will say that this phone contains some open source code, and if you want the source code, please apply here, or please send a mail, or please pay some $2 for the media, and you will get the source code. What does that mean? It means that it has got open source and closed source. They will not talk about the closed source, but as per the licensing agreement, they should say whether there are open source components, and if there are open source components, then based on the licensing terms, they should tell the user. Who is the user? Who are the buyers, right? They have the rights to get the source code. That's why they are stating that. Now your question is that I have a proprietary code, I have a open source code, and I combine to create one program. What will happen? There are different things can happen. Okay, one is that the proprietary will stand as proprietary and open source will stand as open source. It depends on how you interface. Say for example, you take Linux and you want to add a library on top of it. In the sense, you have an application developed on top of Linux and then you want to distribute. That's same as Android, right? Android is the most popular Linux distribution today. In Android, you can find many applications developed on top of it, but you cannot get the source code. It is proprietary. Those applications are proprietary. But if you ask Google or whoever the seller of the phone, you say that I want the Linux kernel source code, they will give. So the open source will be kept as open source, and the closed source, so whatever they modify in open source also will be given to you. It will be open, it will become open, but whatever they have developed as proprietary will stand as proprietary. This is one model. But there is some other case wherein when I take an open source, especially GPL kind of licensing, if I modify or add some code directly or in the interface specific way, I cannot keep that as a closed source. Because of the licensing, I have to keep that code also as open source. So sometimes, so that's why most of the product companies are very, very careful in taking open source and building a product, because they need to ensure that their proprietary code is proprietary as per the license also. If it becomes open, then they lose their uniqueness or some IPs and stuff like that. So one model, proprietary remains proprietary, open source remains open source in the whole program, and open source you will have the rights to get the source code, the other one you will not get it. In some cases, by virtue of license, when you build a product based on an open source, you will end up making completely open source because of the license. Okay. No, the third case is not there. That you take, third case is also there based on license. Yes. So you take an open source code, but you can build a completely a proprietary source code based on the license. For example, Apache v2, it supports that you can take this code and you can build a proprietary. Means you take the open source code and you modify it, and then you can create a proprietary solution. Say for example, AWS and many other organizations, they are users of open source, and many proprietary services they build based on open source because of this license. So all the three combinations are possible. But in case of GPL, the third combination is not possible. You can't make GPL code proprietary. But Apache and similar licenses, MIT, Apache, are different open source licenses possible. So three ways. One, proprietary remains proprietary, open remains open in the whole program. And second case, it by virtue of license it becomes open source. Third is that by virtue of license you can make it closed, even the open source.
Is that clear, Sanjeev? That's a very interesting question. Sanjeev, are you there? Ajay says yes, the previous question. I request you to confirm that one.
This is the most sensitive problem the organizations try to solve.
So Sanjeev is telling, okay, sir, clear. And there's a question from Vishesh coming up. He's telling, good evening, sir. If I have to contribute to open source software, how do I start? Where will I get opportunities, etc.? Just hang on, Vishesh. I think the subsequent section that Sunil will talk about definitely is going to cover. In fact, as I said, one is to make ourselves aware of about whatever the current things are. What is open source? What is GPL, etc., which is the current phase in which presentation is now. When he moves to the next one, definitely is going to talk about how you guys can contribute. Right? Just hang on for some more time. That information will come on the way. Okay. So just
Thanks,
a
Jay,
quick.
for answering.
How is it going? Are you able to connect with whatever Sunil has shared so far? Can you get some quick responses? Because all you guys are Linux users, at least no students who are in the student side, they're all using Linux, or even some of our interns, you got exposed to some form of open source, right? Either in form of the we use the open, what is the TICSIM lab, right, in our internship to simulate the microcontroller. That's nothing but open source, right? So all of us are already open source users technically, even though Chrome, etc., are already open source, but technically after coming to Emertxe's umbrella you are using, but hope you're able to connect with whatever is shared so far. Venkatesh, Vikas, Utsava, Sairam, Irzan, and then Vikas is telling, yes, amazing, getting a lot of new information, says Vikas. Swati is telling, yes, sir. Then Irshan is telling he's a Linux user. Good to know. All right. I think you guys are getting it. Yeah, please proceed, Sunil. I'll be there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, the next one. Linux Foundation is only for Linux. Is it a myth or fact? Don't confuse this M and F. Okay. After I put, I was thinking, yeah, F is not false. It is fact. Okay. M is myth. Okay. Linux
Yeah.
Foundation is for Linux only. Why? I mean, is it true or false? Not myth or fact.
Yeah. I'm telling a lot of people saying myth. Tarun, Sachin, Muhammad Saqib, Vikas, Soma, Shomasekar, all are telling myth. Sunil. Yeah.
Right. This is true because we have already seen in one of the slides. Linux Foundation
Right.
hosts a lot of different projects. Linux is one of the primary projects under Linux Foundation today because Linux Foundation sponsors Linux. And if you know, Linus Torvalds is a fellow in Linux Foundation and he's paid by Linux Foundation. Sponsored. So it's a myth that Linux Foundation is only Linux. There are a lot of projects and sub foundations. Even Soda Foundation and CNCF is under Linux Foundation, and there are a lot of projects. Okay, so the next one is open source is developed by students or developers in part-time only. Is it a fact or it's a myth?
I'm getting answers. Myth, right? Swati. In fact, Sachin is selling both, right?
Okay,
Sriraj, Teju, Pri, yeah, all are selling myth, false, myth.
good, good.
Uh,
I think
yeah,
we have a very good crowd uh, who knows some of the basic concepts very well. That's very nice when we go into the further slides. So open source is not just developed by students or developers in their part time because there are developers full time. Why? Because there are organizations sponsoring. Say for example, in my team, I think 90% of the people are sponsored to do this open source development. So like that, even Kubernetes in Google, Red Hat, Intel, even Microsoft. You won't believe Microsoft has an open source development team. They work only on open source. Okay, so there are uh, uh, people who are 100% working in open source development, not only development, evangelism and ecosystem, community, governance, so on and so forth. So it is not just by students or developers. There are experts. People are working. I mean, 100% on that. Okay, open source software quality and security are always inferior to commercial software. It's myth, fact, or partially correct. Jay, any responses?
yes, Sunil, I went into mute. Yeah, yeah. So again, I'm seeing false, both saying myth, no. It's a mixed response I'm getting.
Okay, okay. So there can be some kind of confusion in this question. Uh, Earlier, people, the major concern about open source was quality and security. Why? Because there are people developing their part-time and there is no quality checks like commercial software, etc., etc. So because of that, people were complaining, saying that quality and security are always inferior. But today, it is not the case, because most of the software development, open source developments, are driven by corporates mostly, and the people who are working are experts in the industry in software engineering. So it is not right that always it is inferior, because many of the products, if you see, the core platform is unchanged. It's taken vanilla kernel, say for example Linux, vanilla kernel directly used in many distributions. Similarly, Kubernetes or Python, for example, all these languages, right? It's kind of vanilla itself is quite strong and good. Okay, so I will say it is myth that it is not always inferior. In fact, some of the commercial software quality is much inferior than open source software. Okay, so now we have seen what is open source and what are the typical components and who develop this open source today: projects, foundations, sub foundations, and the community developers. This is what we have seen. Now, why open source? Why this organization should spend money to make development, and the source code is open, anybody can take and make a product, right? Why? This is what we are going to see in this particular part. Okay, so this is the recap. Okay, so open source is publicly accessible. Now, the major point of open source is a collaborative development. Okay, if you see Linux, it's just a very simple way to understand is that you go to Linux, you search in Google that how many developers are there in Linux. Okay, any guesses? Any guess how many developers contributed to Linux?
Any guesses, guys? How many
Any guess, any
contribute
number?
to? Yeah.
Hundreds, thousands,
Let us see some number
or
coming in. A minute.
few tens of it,
So
tens of developers.
Kunal is telling lakhs, and Sandesh is telling 10K. Amit is telling 1,000. Sachin is telling 15,000. Afzal is telling 10,000. Yeah. Then
So
Rishan
this,
is saying any big company. 16,000 says Vikas. Then 1,000 says Dilan. So as Chandu. Swati is selling roughly 16,000.
okay. So this itself, whatever you try to say, please internalize these numbers. That's what I want to say. Whether you say thousands, whether you say 10,000s, whether you say 15,000, 1 lakh, just internalize this number, not in terms of number. It's a huge number, right? 15,000, say for example, 15,000 is a minimum, I think, active contributors in Linux. If you see the overall contributors, it will be close to 50,000 or something. But if you see the active contributors itself, is more than 10K. Now, overall world. Now, can you tell me how many organizations can afford to have 10,000 developers only working on Linux? It's very, very hard. Even you take Google or any other any big organizations like IBM has got more than 7 lakhs people, right? Can you imagine 10,000 or 20,000 people only working actively on one project? You see IBM's portfolio or Google's portfolio, what all things they are doing. They can't invest this kind of a huge number of people working on one project. This is the power of collaborative working. See, if I start a project today, and if you guys are interested, today I can get 100 people working on it. If you think that, okay, I can learn something, I can contribute something, at least it may not be like all are experts, but I can get 100 developers today. This is a power of collaborative development. Once you see that it's a common goal, it makes sense to me, immediately join, irrespective of the organizations you work, right? This is the major reason why people are investing on it. Because some cases, especially for bigger platforms like Kubernetes, even a big language, these kind of developments, one organization cannot invest. Probably that is not the primary business also, but they need it. They need to build on top of it. So some of the unique thing they want to build on top of it, but the big platform is required for it, an operating system or a orchestration engine or an MI or ML kind of AI/ML kind of processor, like TensorFlow or that kind of solutions or algorithms. It needs more people to develop. But one step further, there are a lot of important aspects. We'll see that. I have not mentioned here collaborative development. I just told collaborative development is one of the reasons. It is collaborative working. We will see what is the power of collaborative working in the further slides. So this is one major reason why open source is becoming more and more popular and strong. Okay, going very strong in most of the product development. Now, you see, this is just to say what's happening in the industry with respect to open source development. If you see GitHub reports saying that there are 40 million users, this is an old one, I think maybe 2019 or 20. More than that, recently, as you know, GitHub has started a R&D center in India. Another important thing is that GitHub is acquired by Microsoft. Microsoft is traditionally or known as a proprietary organization. Windows is a closed source operating system traditionally, right? Today, Microsoft is investing a lot of investment on open source development. Even GitHub is still open source, and GitHub is hosting all the projects. GitHub has a lot of improvements after, acquired by Microsoft. So there are millions of users in GitHub. This I am talking only about GitHub projects, not on any other source control platform like Git, Bitbucket or Bitbucket, GitLab, and all these things. I am only talking about GitHub.com, where this many users are there, and 190 million repositories. It is not a joke. 190 million. You need to put 10 lakhs after 190, right? So that many repositories. A repository means what? It contains some kind of a logical module, and mostly every repository is a project, mostly. But we'll take leave it there. Like some repositories are utilities and stuff like that, but still 190 million is quite huge, right? And out of that, 28 is public repository, because you can have public and closed public repository or an organization repository and things like that. So it's a quite huge number that indicates that open source is so popular in the industry. Just to state that this point is valid with a substantial proof. Okay, sorry. Now this is a survey done by I think Red Hat. Okay, so what is the usage, right? Open source. So most of the cases, people started using the open source. So more than 70%. This is again 2020. If you see today's report, many surveys, even we have done some survey, CNCF has done some survey, Linux Foundation has done some survey. All these surveys says that one or the other way, if not they contribute, they use open source. Most of the organization, more than 90% of the organizations today, except certain organizations, pharmacy or some very, very specific areas where they cannot use it. Rest all of them, one or the other way they use it. Okay, and what not? I thought of giving one video in the beginning. I could not get it on time. Say for example, NASA has done recently one helicopter trial in space. Okay, successfully they have done landing and takeoff of helicopter. It's not a joke in space, right? Because that is an unusual way of landing a vehicle, a space vehicle. If you see the operating system, what is used in that product, I forgot the name. Maybe I'll share the link maybe offline. That is open source. It's a flavor of Linux, I believe. It's an open source development, and people contributed in globally to that. And there are PRs by different people from different countries, and they merge, and that is the base used in that vehicle. So that is a way you can sit here and contribute for NASA. It's as simple as that, right? That's a power. Now, what is adoption? Adoption, it is not just Linux operating system and stuff like that. All the technologies today you see, edge computing. You search edge computing, open source, go and search. In fact, there is a foundation working on edge computing in Linux Foundation with multiple projects like Akraino. Akraino is an open source project. EdgeX Foundry is an open source project. KubeEdge in Kubernetes, it is an open source project. All these are edge computing projects. Similarly, blockchain, Hyperledger. I think you had some session before. I think most of the people today teach Hyperledger based blockchain concepts because it is open source. People can go and try out, right? Similarly, AIML, TensorFlow is an open source, and similarly, so many projects are open source. So if you name any technology, open source is there. Across all technology and business domains, open source projects are very, very predominant, going very strong. Now, then we come to the collaborative culture. This is the backbone of open source, which you will take some time to understand the real essence of collaborative culture. Okay, so first, starting with a project. If I want to say I am starting a project, hey, come, let's do it, then there should be some collaborative goal setting. I can't dictate saying that, hey, I started, this is my idea, so let's go ahead. Yes, I can go ahead with, I will be alone in that open source project. But I take your inputs, you say that, hey, this makes sense, and maybe this makes sense. If it is making sense for more than one, more than two, more than X, then it makes sense. That is how open source projects be successful. Having said about open source so far, it does not mean that all the open source projects are successful, right? 190 million repositories are there. How many you know? How many are predominant? All the predominant projects will have this collaborative power inbuilt to the culture, the collaborative goal setting. So it will be more democratic in nature. So if you want to see the best, the real definition of democracy, come to open source. Okay. Now that is goal setting or the requirements part. Then collaborative development, which we have already discussed, because unless you have a right collaborative development process and guidelines in place, it's very hard for us. Now, collaborative learning, I will go to the last one and the third one next. Last one is collaborative learning, because by contributing, by even if you don't contribute, just part of the community itself will make you learn what is there. It is not only technology. You can learn various things. I think we'll see that in the subsequent slide. Now, the third point is the most important, and I always tell people, this is the real power today of open source, collaborative research. Today, if you see the technology trends, right? You see blockchain, you see edge computing, you see big data, you see cloud native cloud computing, hybrid data, HPC, all sorts of new jargons. If you see, those are the technologies driven globally to answer what next. If you're in technology, people say, hey, what next? Then you will come across with all these terms, right? Augmented analysis or augmented learning, augmented observability, or intelligent observabilities. There are a lot of jargons. If you see Gartner report or any other report, they will say what is next in technology, right? If you take all those things, you will definitely find some open source projects. How is it developed? People should do research to find out what is the next direction, what is important for the industry, what technology we can apply to solve some of the problems and for the users. That research is happening in open source. It is not just development. So today, if you want to do a global research and you want to be driving a technology tomorrow for the for the whole universe, okay, globally, if you want to propose a new technology or contribute to that technology, drive or lead that technology, sitting at home, still it is possible by contributing to the collaborative research. That open source can give you that platform to do research along with experts in the world and be a leader. So it is across the regions. So generally when I talk to students, I say today India is known as a software developing country, right? You're all known as software developers. We don't categorize ourselves saying that we are researchers, right? We are software developers, and we are considered a software delivery center for the globe, right? US, Europe, and everybody will give you software development activities. And who is building the technology? Best, right? That, if you really want to make our country tomorrow a research focused country, a technology developing country, be part of the open source. You can change, we can contribute to this change. It's already happening, it's just a matter of time, but we need a movement from students, like like organizations like Emertxe, educational organizations or institutes. They need to understand this particular point, that if you want to drive new technology, lead technology, do research, be part of the open source. This is one of the ways you can drive this tomorrow. Okay, this is very, very important. Now, so we talked about collaborative goals, development, research, and learning. Now we talk about OpenX, in the sense open source, open research, open collaboration. Nothing. If you see a typical good, very well organized open source project, you will really find it very democratic, open, inclusive, stuff like that. Every voice is heard, every comments are heard, every suggestions are heard, and they respond to it. Only thing is that you don't need to be obsessed with your opinions, because there can be some 10 people saying that, hey, this doesn't work. You should accept, or you should analyze and go with the proof. Then people will accept. So open sorry, open source or open enterprise, I just termed it as open enterprise, means source open, research open, and a collaborative development, open collaboration. There is nothing hidden. Okay, that is the that is why open source is becoming stronger and stronger, right? Now you can ask, why should I? These are the reasons why organizations spend money, right? Because, say for example, initially we started talking about Linux, 10,000 developers or more, the collaborative development, the power of, I can't invest that many developers by any of the organizations. But think about research. I can say, for example, any big organization, they can put a limited number of experts, and they can't find experts also for a particular domain. But if it comes to a collaborative development, I will have experts on edge computing from Google. I will have experts from Amazon. I will have experts from Red Hat. I will have experts from HP, IBM. They come together and do research together. It's more powerful. So whichever they think there is a common goal, and they can build a platform out of that, or they can define the next technology, and then they can build their own value add on top of it. Then they come together. They invest on research also. That's why I'm telling, many big organizations today, they invest a lot of money in open source. Google is one of them. That is one of the reasons why they are so successful today. They have a complete lab for open source development, for new ideas and new technologies and things like that. Even we can go and contribute. Now, why should I do it as a developer, right? Because I'm not an organization, I don't get money or new products, but I'm just a developer. Why should I contribute? One, I'm a developer. What do I need? Okay, what do I need? Not the coding skills, right? What do I need? I need a job, right? That's why you are studying in Emertxe, or studying in university, or studying elsewhere, right? Whatever you are learning, you want to build a living out of it, right? How much ever you say, unless some of you are moving towards spirituality, even spirituality you need money to survive, right? How much money is a different question. So that we will have a separate topic on spirituality. But end of the day, why are you studying? Simple answer, I think you don't need to hide that, right? I just want to get a good job which can help me for my living or my family's living. That's it, right? That's why we are doing all these things. For that, there are certain skills and attributes needed, because I want to sell myself to an organization, or I build a startup and make products and sell it and then get money. That is also possible. So you can be your own employer. But for that also, you need certain skills. So that skills only you need to sell it, right? Either you market yourself or market your product. That's it. Now for that you need coding skills. This is very much available in open source. Any open source you take, you like Linux, you like C, there are n number of C, big, very nice projects. You go, start contributing, your skill set will grow 10x guaranteed. Why? Because those are all will be real projects. You just need to know which project, that's all. That is where the community can help you. So in those projects, if you go, whatever you study in the book or whatever you study in elsewhere or in the college, totally will be different because they are building products in open source. It's like working in a corporate. So if you select Linux or any other prominent project in C, that project will be like a product building. It is not just some time pass coding, right? So definitely your coding skills will improve much higher, I mean multiple times. This is the second point what I told. Most of these projects are real projects used by users. If the users are not there, those projects will not be successful. So we need to just select the right projects which has got higher users. If higher users are there, that means it's a real project. In products the code is used, then you can't simply go and contribute because your code should have right quality. For that you need to have right skills. So once you start working with the project, you will start learning how to code better, because once you submit the code, the maintainer will throw trash saying that, hey, this is bad code. So you need to be patient, you develop better, fix the issues, then you will start learning, right? Communication. And communication and negotiation is the most beautiful thing and most powerful thing you can learn in open source. Why? Because you don't see the person. Because even if you work in an corporate or even Emertxe, right? The mentor or your peer cannot scold you. I mean, in some sense, right? There is some kind of polishness or manage the communication. But in general, in open source, they are very specific to the technicality and the quality of the code. Why? Because the comments come on text or mail. They don't see you and your experience. Maybe some code comes to Soda Foundation, one of the projects. I say that this code is bad or this doesn't work. Maybe the other person who submitted the code may be having 35 years experience. I do not know. I don't check that first, right? I just check the code and then replacing that this code will not work or this doesn't make sense, right? This is a kind of communication you get, very frank, transparent communication. Now you need to hold it. He can't think that I have 35 years experience. Say, why this guy is telling that this my code is not good? You can't have this ego. So you will become polished. Polished in the sense you will become matured. You will have right communication, right negotiation. You will try to understand that why this communication. He is not communicating to me. It is to the code, right? This is a very big learning when you start working in open source. These are some reasons you must contribute to open source. Even if you don't develop coding skills, you will definitely improve your personal skills. Of course, technology, because most of the open source projects will be on specific technology. Say for example, edge computing you are interested, or blockchain, some sessions happen, right? Blockchain you are interested, start working in open source project, edgex foundry, you go start contributing. You don't need to attend 100 sessions for edge computing to understand it. You will just learn theory. But there are opportunity to hands-on on the technology and contribute to the technology, right? Confidence, nothing like it. See, once initially you will face problems, but once you start contributing, the first contribution to a prominent project makes you really delightful. Okay, that confidence you can't explain. It is much beyond your exams, marks, and stuff like that, because this takes the confidence to much higher level, and also the potential for you to get a job is much higher. Okay, now I mentioned about communication, confidence, personal skills and all. This adds to the maturity. We have live examples who are working in, say, interns working in 6 months in open source project. He is like 6 years experience in corporate. Even 6 years experience in corporate can't understand the system much better than this person. He's a college guy, final year intern, 6 months he worked. I have examples, and he got very good jobs and stuff like that. The maturity growth is very very high in when you start working seriously in open source. These are some of the personal skills, right? Now, most importantly, how it adds to your career, right? Visibility is unlimited. Because say, for example, you contribute to Linux, you contribute to Kubernetes, you contribute to some projects which are globally important. Now, whoever is coding contributed, their code is publicly visible. Your name will be there, your GitHub ID will be there. Whatever documents you contributed, whatever way you contributed, it is visible to everyone in the world. So you don't need to write paragraphs in your CV. You can just say, this is the link where I contributed. That's it. So the visibility is global. Second, global networking. Like I mentioned, I may be working with 35 years experience on the other side. He has a lot of experience and expertise by working in software, right? So the global networking, seamlessly possible sitting at home. Employability. This is one of the focus areas of this, Jay and team and everybody, right? All of us wants right good employability. Why employability? Because you will have coding skill, you have good communication, you have technology understanding, you have confidence, maturity. What else you want? See, we also hire people. When we hire, what are we looking for? We look for the right attitude, right good communication, right confidence, right maturity first. Then the coding skill, because coding skill can be learned in 1 month. But you can't build this communication or attitude, right attitude, passion, learnability, all these things you can't teach in 1 month. That's why I'm telling, even 6 months, 10 years experience, they don't have it. So if you have all these combination, your employability will be 100x with the contributions. So that's why you should contribute. Industry recognition is another one. I think whatever today, the minimum contributions, whatever I have done in industry or things like that, majorly through open source, people know me. So the industry recognition comes automatically. You don't do anything for it specifically, but you just start working on a project consistently, contribute in various ways, not only code. We'll see that what all ways you can contribute. The industry recognition simply comes, right? Because people see you working, see you contributing, see you attending meetings, something like that. Leadership is the continuation of research which I mentioned, that you can become a leader for technology globally. It is not just a project in India. The project globally doesn't matter that whether you're an Indian or US or Japanese or things like that. So you can be the leader of the project based on your contributions, completely based on contribution. You can't manipulate it. Various ways you contribute, right? You can become a leader. That's why I mentioned we can become technology leaders. We, in the sense, Indians in India can become leaders of technology. We don't need to go to US to become technology leaders, right? We can do that. That's one way is open source. Research and innovation we have already discussed. These are some reasons. On the left hand side, your personal skills. Right hand side is about your career. Because if you have these, whatever terms I have put here, you become a global leader. That's it. People will come to you for job. You don't need to go to the job. Job will come to you. Then it is only, the difficulty is that you need to select, right? You'll have more offers in hand and you need to select where to go. So that's the power of open source. If you are serious, it doesn't come free. We will see, okay, what is needed. Now, how, right? What we have seen, why we have seen, why we should contribute, and now how. This is the most important thing. But in this section, we can't go into the lot of details, but I will give you some shortcuts. Okay, shortcuts does not mean that no effort. You need effort. You need some kind of discipline. All these things are required. It doesn't come free, right? It doesn't come free of cost. Okay, we'll see how. So first we'll see how the open source ecosystem works. This is what I mentioned initially, that governance, engineering, and ecosystem, right? Governance are foundations, sub-foundations, independent project teams, and stuff like that. And engineering, all the developers, contributors, and experts. I just categorized into 3 different groups. There is a reason, because just to understand that developers mean source code contributors. But That is not only the way you can contribute. The contributors can contribute in various ways. We'll see in the next slides. Contributors can contribute to technical areas, design. Absolutely no need to write even one line of code. So you can contribute to design, architecture, sort of documentation. You can do testing. You can do creative design. So, for example, logo to be designed for an open source. It's required, right? Website is required for open source. All these ways you can contribute. And experts, of course, are experts in that domain to drive the technology. And on the ecosystem, you need users. Without users, no project will be successful. Then vendors to support and sponsor, because they see more users. It's a cyclic reaction, right? So more users, vendors will come. The product companies will come saying that, oh, I will invest on this project. That's why Linux is sponsored by many. Kubernetes is sponsored by many companies, right? Today, Kubernetes cannot go fail. Why? Because so many companies are millions of dollars they are investing on Kubernetes development. Why? They see a lot of users, so they can build a very product. So vendors will come. Now supporters will come. A lot of different organizations, people, they come and support. What are the ways they can support? They can invest money, they can invest time, right? They can do that. This is the way generally all the open source projects work, and most of the prominent project will have a very structured organization, just like a corporate. Okay. Now, how can I contribute? Very important thing is that, are you ready to spare some time? The major catch here is that this is not do or die. It is not an exam. If you don't pass the exam, you will not get that degree certificate for which your parents spend money, right? So you should come out of that thinking. If you think that way, that is what is happening. So generally the conversion rate, I'm telling you bluntly, conversion rate is less than 5%. Say today I have 100 people in this session, and even after talking, probably discussing, and you may be interested, that, this and all, after 2 months, you see less than 5 people will be, maybe, that also is a hopeful, ambitious number, I would say, from my experience so far. You will be contributing consistently in one or the other projects. That is a conversion rate. That's why it's not easy. That's why I said initially that it is, having said that it is so powerful, you can become a global leader, but it doesn't come free. You need to have some time, some focus, consistently. Can you be patient at least 3 to 6 months? Now, the trick or the tip to you is that, how much time? Spare some time means every day 5 hours, every day 3 hours. How much? Because I need to study in Emertxe, I need to study in the college, I need to do intern, I need to do that project, I need to watch movie, I need to do all other entertainments and home course, all these things I need to do, right? Weekly, if you are ready, weekly, if you can put 3 to 4 hours, I can guarantee you in 6 months, you will start tasting the power of open source. Weekly 3 to 4 hours. Then slowly you will find time. That's what I have seen for the people who are really passionate about work, the open source thing. Once they taste, they will know the power, because they will get visibility. People will be, recognizing them. If they go to conference, they'll say, hey, this guy is coming, something like that, and they will get speaking opportunities. They will get idea generation opportunities, and so on and so forth. But to get there, you need to be a little patient. You need to spare some time, irrespective of your current skills level. I'm telling you again, whether you know any language, any technology, doesn't matter. From zero, if you're ready to spare this much time, consistently, regularly, not this week, 3 hours, and after 2 months, it doesn't work that way. You will do contribution, you will do some contribution, but it doesn't make much sense. There are a lot of passive contributors. You see Linux, maybe the last contribution maybe 10 years back, 5 years back. It doesn't make much difference to his career. Of course, that would have helped to get a job, because I contributed to Linux one line and one GitHub link will be given. Maybe I have contributed to timer or memory or something, and that will definitely help you to get a job. For sure, it will help you to get a job faster than anybody else. But that is not enough for you to become an expert in technology and a leader in the domain. That's my interest. Okay, if you want to get a job, you just start working in some open source project, say next 1 year. I mean, even if it is a little irregular, it's fine. You start contributing something. So 2-3 contributions if you make, definitely your chance of getting a job compared to other people at least 10 times, 20 times more. Because generally any student come to our hiring pool, they will not have this kind of contributions. Very less people have. I told you, right? 5%, less than 5%. But if you are, all of a sudden I see a CV with open source contribution, definitely I will pick them. The entry is seamless. You have some 3 or 4 open source contributions with some good project in technology, you are in. You will not be rejected. The CV itself will be accepted. But this, what I am trying to say is that a consistent contribution to become a technology expert and become an industry technologist. You can do it with a regular, disciplined way of working. 3 to 4 hours is more than sufficient if you can spend. Now, what should I do? How can I contribute? You can code. Can you code? You can, not today. Maybe in 1 week you can learn a Udemy course, one course you take, and you can start coding. You can start reading the code, fix some small issues and stuff like that. Any language for that matter. Language learning is not a big deal. It's not a rocket science. So you can code. You can do testing. If you don't know, some people hate coding. Okay, so they want to do testing. They want to find issues in others' code. Yeah, perfect. You can test. You want to write documentation. There are some people very good English and they want to prepare some beautiful documents, articles. Yeah, they can do that. Software design. Some experts, maybe you have some 10 years, 12 years experience, you don't want to code anymore, you want to design software modules. Yeah, you can do that. Beyond that, these are some of the common things. If you Google, you will find, okay, you can start with the documentation, you can start with testing, you can start something, big bug fixes, stuff like that. But I have other things. I have other opportunities for you in open source. Are you interested in creative design? Yes, you can work in open source, because many of the open source projects may not have a right logo, right branding posters. There are many people, they pay. Most of the Linux Foundation projects, they are creative design teams. They are paid. So such things you can make it open source. You can say that, yeah, this design, creative designs, I can make it. That way you can contribute. You are interested in marketing, evangelism, right? You talk about the open source project, about that particular project, and make more community, all these things. It's a paid job today. So you can start, be part of a community, start making that thing. And I know many younger people from India becoming very prominent in Kubernetes and other projects only because of the community activities. And today they are paid. They are employed in Linux Foundation or some VMware and other open source project companies for that particular project, only for community development. So it is not just coding, testing, and documentation. Typically what we say in open source, if you search, you'll find these are the steps to contribute. I would say no, not only that. You can actually do all other things. You can do anything which can help open source. That's why I put, you can do X. You can be part of a open source community for some time, and you find, oh, they don't have a Slack communication channel. Oh, I can build a communication channel. You will be well sought after that. People will notice you because you have the right capability and you can understand what is needed for the project and you can contribute, right? Or you can build, say, for communication mechanism, you don't need to develop. You say, hey, there's 5 students I can take, build that and give it to the open source project. So there are various ways you can contribute. What you need to do, you need to be part of community first, consistently be there patiently, then find ways to contribute. Because end to end, if you see any project, there are various ways you can contribute beyond technical contributions. Okay, now where to start? Where do I start? It is not where do I start, where do I start? For various projects, right? My suggestion, okay, let's come to this slide later. if you want to contribute to any open source project, few things you need to understand. What are the areas you are interested to contribute, whether it is creative design or code or test or something? First. Second, do you have any inclination to any technology? Say, for example, AML. I want to work in big data because big data is very hot. Okay, I will. Cloud computing. Oh, cloud computing in so many companies I see in Naukri and other monster, lot of job opportunities. So let me go to cloud computing. So you can try to find out what is your inclination. Okay, then you need to find out the projects. And then you just go and join that community. Joining a community is as simple as this in this slide. For example, Soda Foundation, we have multiple projects. I will talk about it later. If you want to contribute, you just click that link, sodafoundation.io/Slack. Slack is where we communicate, like WhatsApp. We are also starting WhatsApp these days, but the primary channel is Slack. So Slack is a communication mechanism. It's a messaging system, a tool which most of the open source uses. You just click there, automatically you will ask the Gmail ID or whatever email ID, and you will be part of that community. You just be part of it and say hi, because you will be added to a general channel automatically, and you say hi, say I am so, I would like to contribute. If you can make it clear that I would like to contribute in testing or something like that, it will be much easier, because people will be there, maintainers and other community members immediately will help you. So for us, if you want to be part of the open source, just to start open source, you can later decide about your technology, which other project you want to contribute and build your career. You can decide later. But you want to taste open source contribution, you want to understand open source contribution, how to be part of the community, then just join Soda Foundation's Slack. Just say I want to contribute. Rest we will take care of, because we are very much interested in young developers. Major reason is, as I mentioned, I drive the whole Soda Foundation projects globally, and primarily all the developers and maintainers are from India. So we have a interest and inclination for most of the developers coming from India. We want to help them. We have all the opportunity to help them. We can help you to code, we can help you to test, we can help you to document, you can join our creative design, and we give opportunity for you to speak in global events. Even we just completed one Soda Code hackathon event where students, most of the people are from India. They contributed to open source and they also spoke in the global conference. The advantage is that many other experts see you, right? As a student, you talk. Even if you put that in CV, it adds a lot of value, right? So if you want to just start what is open source, understand and start contributing, you can join this project, because we are there, we can help you out, and we can also guide you, because we also have another initiative on open source courses, wherein we want to help students or young developers to help them to select which project they want to contribute. We are not just obsessed with Soda Foundation projects, because Soda Foundation project is in a particular technology and certain languages. So if you want to contribute to somewhere else, definitely we can help you out that also. Okay, that is because of our interest, that yeah, we want to have more youngsters coming from India to contribute to open source. Now, what do you need? Forget about all your skills and stuff like that. Just create a GitHub account. Just have a GitHub account and then join the Slack. Say I want to contribute. Okay, that's it enough. Nothing else to be done. Okay, that's simple. And you should come with some kind of decisions that, okay, I will spend some time regularly, and even if I don't get answers, I will keep ask questions. That's very, very important, because all the community members or maintainers will be busy. They will have a daytime job, and then on top of that, they will be mentoring and helping and developing for open source. Now they may not have enough time. So you ask something, I want to contribute, nobody may respond. Keep asking, somebody will come, because the community is different time zones, and people will respond to you. So you need to be consistent, patient, and ready to spare some 3 to 4 hours per week. That's it. Definitely you can take your first steps to open source. Now, these are optional. There's some basic information about Soda Foundation, documentation, and you can, if you know some basics of GitHub, it will speed up. Okay, even if you don't know anything, as I told you, just join the Slack, have a GitHub account. That's enough. You can get started from there. Okay. Now, this is about Soda Foundation because it's already 9 o'clock. So I will skip through the slides maybe in just 1 minute or 1 or 2 minutes. Okay. This is what is Soda Foundation. It is a foundation under Linux Foundation which has got multiple projects, and there are many companies part of it. Why I show this is that these are all companies right now, and there are other companies going to join. These are part of this organization, and they see this development, they see the community, they see the experts who are contributing. So the employability in these organizations also can go high. These are projects. Why this? Because there are a lot of different projects, internal and external. We have our own projects, and some of the projects from industry also join us. Why? Because we are working in data and storage. So we are trying to solve problems of data management and storage. In that space, there are a lot of projects outside. So they also join to build collaborative solutions. So we have a landscape where we have our own projects, foundation projects, and also eco projects. It means ecosystem projects join. Say, for example, edge computing. We have a project on edge. We have multi-cloud projects, and we have storage projects, and container projects like Kahu is our own projects, which is container, Kubernetes and containerization kind of projects. So one good thing for any community belonging to a sub foundation will be it will have multiple projects, multiple technologies, and multiple programming language. So it will be easy for you to choose. Say, for example, you know Python, you can join our Delphin project, which is a monitoring project. Okay, if you are Go, then you can join the Kahoot project, something like that. And scripting, we have dashboard, website design, all these things are there. Okay, so that's the advantage of foundation because it will have multiple different projects. Okay, these are some people photo and stuff like that. These are some project information. I will skip the. These are the echo projects who are joining us and joined us. And these are some technical research activities what our foundation do. We are doing some industry survey, research survey, and then derive the research trend. What is going to happen in data and storage tomorrow? These kind of activities also we do. Right now, this survey is open. 2022 survey is open. It will be closing on August 15th. If you have some, interest to give some suggestions, you can take this survey. It's free. And we conduct a lot of global events. Other than we participate in other events, we just completed a hackathon, which is called Soda Code. We have a lot of developers, and most of the winners are from India. We are very happy about that. And Soda Cone is a global event, and the next Soda Cone is going to happen in 2022 December. Okay, that's all about Soda Foundation. These are all some events and some kind of information about Soda Foundation and what our activities are. Now, the last and most important thing is that, by the way, can I get a job faster? This I have already covered to some extent, but still I will just reiterate that point. Okay, so what do I do to get a job? This I just searched in the evening in the Google, saying what do I do to get a job? So there will be so many different points, like how to prepare your CV, what all things are required technology today, what companies are working, stuff like that, right? So basically what you do, you acquire some competency, right? Maybe the C skill, programming skill, or some technology skill, edge computing, blockchain, C, Go, C Sharp, or whatever, Java. So you acquire some competence. Then you search for a job, right? You search, or Jay will help you to search a job, or connect to the company, right? Then you'll try to find out some job to apply. Then you apply, then test an interview, and then job. That's it. This is a step. Okay, you will go through different days and months sometimes. Sometimes you get it faster, sometimes it takes time, but this is the process. Now, how open source can help you? Like I mentioned, your CV will stand out for 101%. Sure, it will stand out because top of the CV, you put your open source contribution, open source speaking. That's it. People cannot reject, especially for freshers. If you're a developer applying for a particular domain, then in that domain, if you have contributed open source or any other open source is also fine, your CV will stand out and it will not be filtered out. Easy entry, guaranteed. Okay. Second, higher credibility. In the sense, in the interview, you don't need to talk too much because those links will talk for you. Why? Because if I get a CV saying that I have given one small change in TensorFlow, if I am hiring for AIML or even a fresher, maybe you contributed to say Delphin or any project for that. Why? Because the corporate person who are hiring manager for you will definitely understand how difficult it is. First of all, you need to come to that community and discuss with the community members, understand it. Then you need to build some skill. Then you need to identify what to contribute. Then you contributed. So it is a cycle. You have gone through that cycle means you have the right passion, attitude, and the discipline to do it, and the competence. So one small open source contribution means a lot for a hiring person. If he is matured and understand the process, definitely he will understand that this guy is a right attitude. Like you see people who are very initiative, organizing events and stuff like that, right? You see that they are more proactive. They take initiatives. Such kind of people are very important for an organization. They are the assets. So you can build credibility very easy. You don't need to talk too much. Even if your communication is low, don't no worries, just put the links. That's enough. Now, third one is that when you work in community, there will be a lot of experts from different companies. In our community, there are a lot of company experts, Toyota, Huawei, IBM, a lot of experts are there. They see, when they get an opening, they definitely will think, hey, this guy who's working, contributing that project. So job can come to you. You don't need to go to the job. That's a power. This is limited. These 3 points I have limited points which I mentioned only for getting the job. But if you want to build the career, like I mentioned, you can become industry leaders. Then not only job coming to you, jobs will come, career opportunities will come to you. You can choose, right? You can lead. That's the power of open source. If you patiently, consistently put some effort, right choice, and discipline. Okay. I took 7-8 minutes extra. That's all for tonight. Thank you so much. Some slides I rushed through, but anytime you can reach me. And the best way to reach me is that you can just join Soda Foundation Slack. And even if you want to start your journey in open source, my suggestion is that just join Soda Foundation because we have very good guys who are ready to support you. Okay, we have mentoring sessions, we have mentoring groups for students, and we also have some tie-ups with universities where we are starting maybe in December some open source course with a different modules where they can have open source project interns and stuff like that. Okay, so I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope at least some of you attempt and become real open source developers or contributors. Thank you so much. I'm open for questions if you are patient to ask questions.
No problem. So thank you very much, Sunil. Can I get some quick feedback about the talk, guys? What did you learn? Of course, people are asking for quiz and coupon code. I'll give me a minute or so. In the meantime, can you give me quick feedback about what did you learn? Madhuri is telling thank you, sir. Then Mohana is telling very useful. Utsava is telling very informative. Sachin is telling excellent session. Then Prashant is telling wonderful informative webinar. Thank you so much. Very informative, says Saranya. Interesting and new, says Sandesh. Oh, a lot of messages pouring in. Great session, informative. Got some ideas. Sunil sir, you should become an all-time mentor teacher for Emertxe. Okay, you should join Emertxe. I'll hire you. Okay, great
That's
session.
an alternate career for
Atish, yeah, sure. It's useful and informative. Great session. Thank you. Got some idea again. Thank you, sir, for good information. Thank you, sir. It's a great opportunity. So much it was really informative. In depth, I learned something. Got a clarity about open source. Great session. For me, it's interesting. He's a good coach. Very, very good. Is Muhammad, because he's telling, very much informative. Also build some confidence. Says Bhagyashree. Muhammad is telling, thank you, sir. It's pouring, Sunil. And I'm not able to read some of the names. Sorry, guys, because it's running very, very fast. Okay. And you can see the passion that, Sunil brings to the table whenever, especially when I say, the topic of open source, right? He quickly jumps in, and I think the passion is very evident in the way how he speaks and he put across things, right? So thank you very much, Sunil, for sharing your learnings about open source. From my side, couple of points before I move into the quiz part. One is, I always tell in my monthly meetings, in a very detailed discussion we have, students know that in a monthly meeting I say, right, we have become a generation of Uber and Swiggy, right, where we press a button, things come to your door. And recently I learned that tools like what is it, 10 minutes grocery delivery or something like that, right? Zepto or BB now, a lot of apps are there, right? So what these apps are made, right? They made us to believe that if you press a button in 10 minutes, things will happen, right? But in reality, things are far beyond that. That's what, if you remember, if you see the summary of what Sunil is mentioned, he spoke about two important points for you guys as a student. One is giving enough time, because often we also see in our placement that people get really restless. 1 month, 2 months, can I get a job? In monthly meeting, people put like a Rajinikanth 100 guns, right? You guys ask me so many questions. It takes time. So, consistency and patience are two important factors, and which automatically you will be able to learn if you start contributing to open source, right? And don't see open source as a forum, as a second pointer, just to get a job, right? Go beyond that, as Sunil mentioned. You can become a global leader, and you can do that, right? It takes time, and as always in our webinar, as Sunil has rightly presented, we present the information and we give the necessary resources and links, and we leave the decision to you, because you are the ultimate decision maker for your career, and you know what right actions to take now. And he has given his contact details also, in case if you want to just look up Sunil Kumar in LinkedIn, you will be able to figure it out. And in case if you need his connect, you can always reply to our Emertxe. We'll be glad to connect with these experts, including Sunil, right? We'll be glad to facilitate that, right? Just I'll take off the presentation from you, Sunil. Give me a minute. Let me
Yeah, I have already stopped.
that quiz, right? 1 second. Uh, Hope you're able to see my screen and the quiz code here. You can see that's a coupon code for all of you. Let me also upload the coupon code in case some of you are not able to make a note of it. I'm right away uploading into the give me a minute. Yeah. If you see in your right side in your panel, there will be a section called handout. It's just getting uploaded. Give me a minute. Yeah, it's uploaded. You can see the
We can also
in
answer.
case.
We
Yeah,
can
you
also use.
can. Yeah, and then to take the quiz, you need to go to our Instagram page, instagram.com/emergeit. You just need to click the logo, and the quiz is already live. You can see the screen. You need to, as I said, you need to enter the coupon code, because we wanted to make it mainly for the people who attended this. Even somebody outsiders attend, we don't qualify. People only who attempted the webinar, you guys have the coupon code, and then you can take it up. And then early next week, our team will evaluate this quiz, and then we'll revert back with the winners and goodies, right? And as always, our team will announce the results. You can watch out for this space early next week, right? So that's it, guys. So thank you very much, Sunil. Thank you very much for your time. Last week you're not well. As you can see, these guys, largely what I've seen interacting with so many entry-level engineering graduates, right? They all need, the right set of mentoring and guidance. And I'm pretty sure you coming and passionately communicating this, will open some minds for sure. And maybe they will wait for some time, and some will get started later. But this knowledge, I'm sure will help them in their career in the long run. Okay. So thank you very much, Sunil, on behalf of our team, for sharing your perspectives. Sunday night, it's Saturday night, it's not easy, right? We all have so many responsibilities at home side as well, right? So thank you very much, Sunil. So we'll also early next week we'll edit this video and share it with you also. You can also share it with your community, and we'll share it to whomever has attempted registered today. we'll share it to them also, and the certificates and goodies will come on to you, right? Okay. So thank you very much, one and all. Thank you very much, Sunil, for students who actively participated and asked so many questions. Still, many are coming up, right? I think it's still 9:15, little late, yeah, right? We like
Maybe you can
all.
send it and we can offline answer to them.
Yeah, we can anyway just reply to the emails. Our anyway, Sunil has shared his coordinates also. Just or if you want us to connect, we'll be glad to do that. Okay. So thank you very much, all of you, and I want to thank my team who's been in the back end, silently sitting and making the entire thing happen. Team Emertxe. Thank you very much, Kavya, Nagesh, Sharad. I know you've been working on some portion of another to make this event happen. Okay. So
Yeah,
see you in
special
the
thanks
next.
to Navya to help
Right?
on the logistics.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Sunil. See you. Thank you, all of
Thanks. Good.
you.
Take care.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye bye. Have a nice weekend. Bye bye.